and welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. I am your host, Jitendra. Our guests are from different industries and functions. They will share their experience, strategies, and the changing landscape to help you take the service operations of your business to the next level. Hi, Jitendra. Welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. It's very nice to have you here. And in your journey of 30 plus years, you've worked across various functions and many companies. So to begin with, take us through your corporate journey.
Thank you, Jitendra. Thanks for this opportunity. It's a pleasure connecting and conversing on this platform. Jitendra, as you know, I have been a business excellence professional. Last 31 years, I have been working in different capacities across organizations. But largely, my action areas has been to create an improvement in key business metrics and create an achievement towards customer experience. So, in this two endeavor, what I have been trying to do across the industry is reimagining the business processes, re-engineer the projects, and reinvent some of those platforms and systems which are underlying required for making those value creation to be done. And they are essentially done by bringing a right kind of a methodology and the technology to really make that change happen. Now, when I talk about the industries, which is spanning around 31 years, I started my career in manufacturing in a capital equipment manufacturing company as a management trainee. And with 9 years of early experiences of understanding the shop floors, the various nuances which are required, I was in a position to bring an ISO 9000 kind of a mindset and the fabric of quality systems to be established. Post that, bringing in a TQM thinking and a business process re-engineering mindset in the organization to create those propel in terms of achievement of those strategies. With a larger inning of manufacturing, I moved on to service industries in order to really become a total quality man. And in that endeavor, retail was the first entry point. So I joined up some of those early stage retail organizations like what we understand today is shopper stops and some of those brands. From there, ITES is the next wave which actually happened in this country, and I was fortunate to really work for some of those CRM companies, both at a third party as well as at the captive level, to manage those CRMs for Australia, for UK, and for US for different business domain. It could be a collection business of a bank, to maybe an insurance business of some insurance company, to doing an airlines service and support, to maybe a telecom kind of a company service providing. So across the width of the industries, the CRM piece is something which need to be really managed and enabled. So those were the earlier experiences, which made me get into a banking kind of a exposure with one of the leading bank, and later on the largest inning which I had of my career out of 31 years with a leading insurance player, private insurance company. All across, while there is so much of a heterogeneity in terms of industries, but I have been trying to drive one single agenda of customer experience and mobilizing the right kind of a productivity improvement through an enablement of the processes and people to make those value creation taking place. And if I really put this experience, there were couple of center of excellences is something which I have actually set up and have scaled, and they could be classified as the center of excellence for BPM, business process management, was a founding thing. So starting with an ISO 9000, what I spoke about, to maybe bringing a architecture for service is something which is now the kind of a scale which has taken place on the BPM side of it. So I was fortunate to build that foundation for these set of organizations to creating a center of excellence for improvement, continuous improvement. So all those methodologies, be it a lean or a Six Sigma led methods which are required, project management interventions to OD interventions, is something which I was running and creating a fabric at a bottom of the pyramid level to a strategic initiative which need to be really taken for an organization. So across the hierarchy, whatever are the changes and improvements which are required, how to really mobilize that particular change is what is the experience brought in through Center of Excellence for Continuous Improvement. Later on, that Center of Excellence is now tweaked to Center of Excellence for Innovation and Digital Transformation, which is the latest buzz and people have been talking about. So rather than looking just for a continuous improvement, how to bring a fabric of disruptive thinking and a moonshot kind of a level, and that's where automation as an engine need to be really brought in. Some of the AI/ML based technologies and solutions which need to be really touching some of those fundamental processes, which could be a customer acquisition process or maybe a customer service process across the industry, be it for a bank or an insurance, is what I have been trying to really get into. And the last but most essential center of excellence is Center of Excellence for Customer Experience. So how to really make across the touch point a unified experience to the customers, how to really manage those transactions, which is either in terms of maybe an inquiry of a customer or a request of a customer or maybe a complaint, and that is something which need to be really managed with a scale, is requiring a different technology, at the same time a larger design thinking or an empathy which need to be bound in the business processes. So that's the kind of interdisciplinary experience which I actually bring onto the table.
Yeah, very interesting, because you've spoken about different industries, right from manufacturing to ITES. So basically, that's how the country has moved. What is the common thread? I mean, like what is the foundation which runs across all these industries and maybe all these functions also? So what is that common thread?
So delivering a value to a customer is the real common thread, which is connecting a customer to an organization. And customer is on one side of the delivery end, and the providers are here on the organization side. Unfortunately, while the evolution has taken place, the organization still exists in the hierarchies and in the functional silos. So you can imagine there is a customer side which is always there waiting for a delivery to take place in a horizontal manner, which is where the customer is standing. But most of our transactions are actually taking place vertically, and that in a technical language, in quality context, we call that as a intersection of horizontal and vertical is a cancer node. So the more we understand this cancer node and actually trade off with the right kind of a methodology and interventions, which is now possible through technology, we actually create a STP experience, a straight through processing.
So just tell me now, if it is very simple, so there is an organization, there is a customer, we're putting it together, it all looks very simple. Actually, it's very complex. So how does this play out when we talk about scale? So if it's a small organization and there's a limited number of customers, we know how it works. Because then you have some attention to the individual, to the human, the individual customer. But when we talk about scale, then it is everything is on scale.
You are right. Customer is a number, is one expression, but customer is called as n is equal to 1, because that customer is that customer and is to be treated in a particular way, and that's where the whole evolution of our personalization is coming. So contextualization, personalization, and call to action to that customer is where is the key for service differentiation, for a bottom line or maybe the top line of an organization. So while the top line is coming as a summation of those n's, but that n is still an individual, And that is what an organization has to really understand,
Yeah,
work for.
yeah. And now also coming to when we talk about scale, again, here again, okay. So what is the role of leadership in a scale scenario, in a large scale scenario? Because here maybe the senior most person or the top end of management is not really in touch with the line which is actually dealing with the customer.
So in a traditional organization, which will be like a pyramid, which we always understand and relate with, you will always find that there is somebody at the top, then there is somebody at the bottom, and then the customer is at the bottom of that bottom. So it is actually crushed under the pyramid in that sense. Whereas when there is a school of thought which inverts the pyramid and say that the customer is on the top and all my front line is actually servicing that customer, and I am there as a service leader. So it's the same organization, but it is turned upside down, and that changed the whole fabric. The third way of really looking into it, if we really understand the value stream, the whole organization, rather than being looked upon as an efficient departments and compartments kind of a thing versus a value stream, and that's where like a service delivery chain need to be created, or there is a product line kind of a structure which comes in. So that's how the different evolution have come. There is nothing one single approach which an organization can find, but certainly there has to be a mix need to be really created. So that's where you called about maybe there is a credit card organization. So the entire CO to the delivery of a card customer becomes one product line, and it is getting managed rather than getting lost in the larger bank structure. So those are the other kind of experimenting which can be brought about.
The crux of what we are saying is that there is no single right or a single wrong. Every organization, every customer, I think there are multiple or God knows infinite combinations that might be working with the fund. But what you're also saying is that the fundamental or the foundation that you're talking about is the process string that actually ties everything together. So, Jitendra, you were talking about scale. Okay, now specifically in scale, the question that's coming to my mind is that, in scale, what happens is the distance between the line which is servicing the customer in any form, and the leader is there's a big distance between that. So since you have done business excellence, they are central functions. Basically, they are driven differently. They're not a part of a strategic business unit, or it's not a product. It's something that actually moves across the organization. So in your experience, how is it that the leaders are able to ensure that what they are thinking and what they want is what is happening, with the line that's actually dealing with the customer?
So absolutely bang on. This is what is the challenge for all the leaders of the organizations when they want to really create certain fresh agenda or maybe a new mandates to be brought in. Obviously, there is a running train. There is already a running engine, which is a business BAU kind of a thing, which is taking place across the functions. While that need to be really streamlined and they need to be made efficient in whatever is the current level to a new level of performance, but there is something which need to be really brought at a different level of thinking as well as an action level, and that's where most of the organizations bring up a strategic team or a strategic team or a crack team on a war room kind of a engagement. And this particular team is basically deriving the entire vision of the leader, which is inculcated among those best of the people drawn from the organizations to work as a cross functional team to really mobilize and see whether this entire new thinking which we are trying to really bring in is something which is conducive and it can be really progressed. And for making that thing happen, they really build those kind of a right kind of a research, which could be bottom up, it could be drawn from the industry best practices, it could be coming with the support of the best of the talent in terms of consulting organizations, and a mix of that. So this entire strategy is then converted into some of those initiatives, and those initiatives are then converted into those projects and ideas, which is converted into an action plan. So there is a different level of piloting which is taking place in an organization, which is bringing an organization to the new orbit, and then there is a BAU which is taking place. So the same organization over a period of time actually gets to a new rhythm. So whatever is the new thing which is instituted becomes institutionalized, and that becomes business as usual, and a next fresh set of things are to be brought in, which could be coming in different titles. It could be called as maybe a value innovation team, it could be called as a business excellence team, it could be called as maybe an OD intervention of an organization, it could be a digital transformation or a digital initiative kind of a team responsible to really make that thing happen. So this is how a parallel running of an existing organization with a new engagements are taking place.
So basically what you're saying is that, see, the focus of the business teams is to get business to, they have a, profit and loss to look at, the top line, bottom line. It's also possible that they are achieving what they are achieving, okay, without this interventions. Yeah. So it's like the closeness of this external team, that is the business excellence team, and the business team, that's actually, the what you see on the balance sheet, unless they are so mixed or unless they are so together, you'll never get the right the kind of result. And also what I'm hearing you say is that leadership requires to sponsor this, because it's more of a top down approach, if I might just put it in words.
So yes, top down from the thinking process, but bottom up is coming up in terms of an actioning or the internalization of that thing take place. And in the larger design, it is actually woven where the max and mix of both is taking place. So while there is some mandates which are coming out, and there are certain sponsored resources of that nature coming out, at the same time there is a like a plugging of those best talents who are the catalyst by nature, who are the facilitators for making that kind of a change, as a representative of respective functions are brought in, and then that agenda is brought in on an experimental basis, on a pilot basis, and then it becomes BAU. So that's how a typical change which takes place in any organization.
And then the organization moves to the next level.
Absolutely.
But there are also possibilities that different teams or different silos or departments or products could be at different levels of evolution. So some are, fairly advanced, some are, not so advanced. Of course, that challenge is always there. But everyone thinks that technology is the solution to all the problems. I think even the vendors, when they are selling their products, make it sound like that. So what is your view? Because you spoken about, how technology is to be used for getting better results and for innovation, etc. So how do you see this adoption of technology, partly where the units are at different levels of evolution, and also whether that's the exclusive solution to all the problems?
So there is never a like a silver bullet which will solve all your problems. So there is never a technology solution which will solve uh, the critical problems which a business owner will be really facing. But yes, technology can solve some part of this problem, and there are many components. So as a part of the business excellence professional, I have been trying to bring a methodology plus technology. Technology alone or methodology alone is not capable of doing it. एक लंगड़ा है और एक अंधा है. That's how this chemistry goes. And the moment they understand the strengths and the weaknesses of each other and they coexist, they actually make a impact, because methodology is the fabric through which the delivery or the value streams are actually woven, and technology is where within that fabric the transaction has to be speeded up. So one need to be having that rail track which is of a methodology, and then the engine has to be put in, which is actually your technology. So the moment you understand the combination of a strong engine as well as a strong track, then only a train can be really running with a high speed. Otherwise you will be having a great engine, but it will be stuck. It will not be making that thing happen. So that's where if you really see, many organizations are stuck with a high investment on technologies, and they are wondering with those kind of an ROIs.
Yeah, I was just coming to that because I hear, I mean, when we're talking to people, you hear that, oh, I've invested so much in technology, but I'm not really being able to get optimum use of it. This also happens often, is that you have invested in technology, but your own people are not willing to, use that technology to the best possible extent, or, derive the right benefits.
So a technology which is actually meeting the three principles, once that acid test is done, is going to be fulfilling all those other criteria which any organization, any function will be looking into. One is that it should have a matrix of desirability, that need to be a tick. Once that, yes, it is not a push, but it is a pull. That's what is the desirability part of it. The next comes in, basically, yes, I need it, but at what? Is it really a possibility, or it's a illusion? So what is the feasibility of it? How easy it is to really implement it and make it happen. If it is too difficult to change the way I am currently doing, or it is in conjunction to my BAU, I need to be doing something. So my BAU continues, and then this is something which is an add-on. Then where is the time for it? Where is the resource for it? And so on and so forth. So that the feasibility part comes in, and then at what cost? The viability part of it. So the third dimension. So it is great, it can be implemented quickly, it is what is required, but it is not creating an ROI, it is not making those kind of an equation, the time for which has not come. So it's good to have it, but certainly it will create more bleed. And all these three ticks are done, then the owner, along with all the other functions, along with the CFO, will create a push for it to create this pull technology happen. You understand what I'm saying?
So I know that a particular area in my company is making there are lots of errors in a particular area. I'm just taking an example. So I need to find a solution to that. So there is a desire, there is, this feasibility and ROI, all three, right? Because when my errors reduce, obviously, things are going to get better. Now, I don't know what is the percentage of these kind of scenarios where I exactly know that this is my problem. That's another aspect of it, that I might be having problems but I'm not able to see all the problems. They manifest themselves in many different ways, and sometimes even attrition, it's very strange that, people leaving organizations, that your problems could even manifest in that manner. Actually, you could be having operational problems which is resulting into people leaving the organization. So where the problem is known, okay, and you also kind of get the right solution, now that's a certain percentage. But there is also this, the shiny object kind of a thing, where new technology, it's a fad, and everyone wants to use it. Now, of course, the technology is good, and I'm here specifically talking about artificial intelligence. Okay. If you really think of it, there's a lot that it can do. Everyone wants to use it. Uh, but where do you see this going? I mean, how effective can it be? Is it just using technology? Is it, just that it's available and it's being sold at a particular price, or it's also that, everyone else is doing it, so I must also do it? So where do you see this artificial intelligence as technology being, effective?
So let me add a dimension of a specific example rather than talking anything and everything about artificial intelligence. As I said, that I have been working with ITES as an industry, which is where a typical contact center or maybe a back end data servicing and uh, processings are taking place, shared services kind of an entity where transactions are getting processed. Now, take a simple example of a call center, a contact center, where toll-free numbers are created, an agent comes in, the time for an agent to be really productive, which is called as a learning curve after the classroom training and then those kind of a mock assessments and few calls, is around maybe 6 to 8 weeks kind of a time frame, depending upon the type and nature of complexities of the processes. Uh, and then there will be still an experiences of poor call experiences provided to the customers. There are call monitorings taking place. There is a limitation of that particular agent taking only X number of calls. He can take, or he or she can take only a particular language only, while customer requires multilinguals and so on and so forth. Customer requires maybe a 24 hours kind of a support, but there is a shift duration. So a typical industry which is solving a large part of the problem, rather than just a desk operator doing it from the branch, ITS and industry is solving it. But is it actually solving, or there are many other associated problems, new problems which have been created? How AI can solve this problem now is the kind of a new value proposition comes in. So in those scenarios where a voice calls are coming up, are taken up, a voice bot is getting introduced. Now, voice bot as a technology among the various AI/ML based solution technology, which is a voice AI solution, is actually parroting the procedure, the script part of it in a much more repetitive manner, relentlessly, without any fatigue. It can be doing 24 by 7, right? It can do the same conversation in multilingual, not with a 2 month of training cycle, but on the day of launch, which could be on the T day or T+1 or T+3 day, is the only preparation which is required to really introduce this kind of a technology. And from the day one, that particular call will be effective from the perspective of narrating or reaching it out as far as all the scripts are concerned. In those scenario, one can really design that where the escalations need to take place, whether that those degree of complexities of FAQs are the capability of that voice bot, or it could be then escalated to a human being more skilled to really do that. Experience shows that from the day one of this launch, around 50 to 60% of the call volume or a traffic can be diverted from a human being to a voice bot. Now, that's the efficiency which is brought in at 1/5 of the price, with a multiplier effect and an scalability to a tune which is unparalleled. So that's the power of technology. So appropriate technology selected for a right kind of a process can create a magic. But obviously, the right kind of a script creation, riding on a right LOB types, and making those kind of a FAQ understanding need to be done as a part of a stitch of methodology. Otherwise, a technology will actually create a boomerang.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's where there's a lot of miss that happens, in the sense that technology, of course, solves a great problem. There's nothing to beat efficiency, speed, and error-free interactions or transactions or whatever. But the whole catch here is that, and I'm also talking out of experience. So once you have set the technology, then there's not much that you can do about it, because it's like, if things have moved from your area of control to something else, and if you don't really understand how that works, all the drops that are happening will never find the right solution. So while repetitive work gets done, which is good, it's error free, etc., but what is actually happening is that, where are the people who understand how that technology really happened, what went into it, and what could be the pros and the cons of it? So it's like, I bought technology, I moved things to that, and that's it. But all that is outside is lost, and that's what actually happens when technology gets used without the real understanding of what it can solve and what it cannot
So
solve.
you are right in a manner, and that's what I was talking about. Methodology plus technology will create a great combination of making a win of customer experience, getting the desired efficiency and effectiveness. But technology alone, if it is deployed, will give many minuses. It may give a short-term effect of giving you an illusionary effect of a scale as a tick box, as an efficiency and other thing as a new possibility, but they are not a actual reality. And that's where, if you really relate what I started with, reimagining the processes, re-engineering the project, and reinventing the platform is something which is the essence of making any digital transformation happen. Unfortunately, digital transformation is understood to be only a technology initiative. It's a business initiative enabled through technology.
Yeah, it's on the dot, as you say, because technology is a business, should be a business driven solution.
When I am stitching a technology, only appropriate technology, relevant technology component as a part of my value stream. Value stream is owned by me, and I have reimagined it. And I know that here there is a call center part which I need to be augmenting through a voice bot. Here my SMS blast need to be augmented through maybe a WhatsApp kind of a service. Here I need to be really making an RPA solution to really take care of some of those extraction from a back end and creating a fulfillment at the front end, and so on and so forth. So I need to stitch this journey to make a completely broken, non value adding activity driven long process into a value stream mapping process as a STP, straight through pass. And that is where the components are to be brought in. So one provider cannot do that, one department cannot do that. Somebody has to orchestrate this entire journey for the customer, on behalf of the customer, for that particular process person, understanding the limitation of each technologies and utilizing only their strength part to stitch my part of the objective.
Yeah, and that's not also just going to be one process, and you use the right word,
Process after.
orchestrated, because it's everything. The entire ecosystem actually has to be aligned. Otherwise, then you have all these other issues of something which is so technologically advanced, and on the other hand, you have something which is so basic, which is manual, and unless the whole thing comes together, it doesn't work. So let me just ask you another question. You did work on the recovery side of retail, this whole what we call collections, and there is this one leg of collections which is where the collection agent, okay, actually talks to the defaulting customer.
Delinquent.
So yeah, a delinquent customer. So just tell me how did you use this the methodology and or technology to evolve or to make this a more smooth and a better process.
Thanks, Satinder, for reminding me my days of collection, where actually I have set up the entire collection unit for one of the largest bank. So as I said, before we really bring any change, which is technology led, one need to be really having a very sound methodology and a fabric to be really plotted. So when I, as a quality professional, got into this kind of a role, I started looking into some of those fundamentals. So what is happening in collection to me is basically a result of a credit process which is taking place prior to collection, not doing necessarily the kind of a role which credit has to play. As simple as that. Because quality believes in a principle which is called build quality at source. If my credit is done right, the need for collection is reduced or eliminated theoretically, right? Now let's understand this credit as a business function. So there is a a demand of a bank to create a lending growth. At the same time, there is a credit function which is responsible for doing a right kind of evaluation for risk. Now take an example or a metaphor, which is I call it as a car, CAR, car. So credit assessment for risk is something which what my credit function is looking at. And in a car, I can really create a growth or the right kind of a driving experience through an acceleration, provided I know that my brakes are right. If my brakes are in place, then I can accelerate. Otherwise, it will create a larger risk. Right? Now, this is where the oiling of your credit entity need to be really done. Now, when the first brake fails, then the second brake comes in, and that's where the collection as an entity or a function comes in. Right? So somewhere the first brake has not played a role, and then the acceleration has taken place. I need to be really now creating a recovery done. So if we really understand this part of the credit slippage, or there would be a second scenario where there is a customer who is right profile, but it is a situations which has led for that person to be delinquent. So I need to be bringing first and foremost, in order to make collection happen, a right kind of a mindset and a skill set. Here the mindset is of a service, that it is not that the person is actually defaulter. A person is in a situation and I need to help him. And how can we work together as a win-win proposition? That's the mindset. And the skill set is how early I can really identify that. And that's where the entire collection or a recovery process actually is not a post facto kind of an exercise. It is more of a planning exercise which is done as a pre-delinquency kind of a checks and balances to be brought in. And the entire effort of making your processes strong on those, with those metrics, is something which is a foundational thing, which actually makes a huge impact. So rather looking collection as a function and in saying that, oh, so this is what has now come to my bucket, let me start collecting it by making a call, by making an SMS blast, by making a lien letter and creating some kind of a dunning letter and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of recovery methods which are always there. But those methods need to be really plugged appropriately at different stages in terms of a sensitivity for many things. One is from the service point of view as well as from the cost point of view, and then in order to really make that thing happen on a timely manner. So pre-delinquency management is becoming a essential dimensions, and large point of our effort when I was trying to really get into was to manage that part of it. Apart from bringing all those broken pieces of processes and inefficiencies and the waste which were there in the people, process and systems, were actually getting plugged.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying is that the intent has to be very clear. I think somewhere in many functions and in scale that people work in, somewhere the intent gets lost. So it's very important to have that intent right first and foremost, and then put your
So
process.
intent, if it is left to the people, will be there, but it will be lost over a period of time with a handoff. But if it is defined as an intent in terms of business practices, in terms of those process, then it will continue in spite of people.
Yeah, yeah, and it also needs a repetition, I think.
That's where the process orientation required. So my large part of the effort has been to really lay those foundation of creating a process for collection business, and then enabling with the appropriate technology, bringing in those kind of a metrics impact which is required within the larger ecosystem.
Yeah. So now just tell me, when everything gets so process driven, one is process as in manual processes or methods that we follow, and one is, of course, technology. Uh, what is the extent of role that is played by actually reviewing what's really happening on the ground? Because see, once you lay your process in place, expect that people will follow the process, and you will also have some metrics in place to know that okay, it's being done or not being done. But what happens to that whole feel piece, because now it's everything has become a process and a technology driven initiative.
So there are two methods by which generally one actually go about. One is that you define the periodicity of a proactive reviews or a continued effectiveness review to be done, which is periodically based, saying that okay, once in 6 months, once in a year kind of a thing, which is simple to really articulate and express it out, but you will find that there will be a variation in terms of an execution, because things does not happen in that kind of a periodicity in terms of the degree of changes which are required or is taking place. The other thing is to really constantly look into the outputs and the outcome of those processes, and that is where the dashboards take place, because that dashboards are more real on a daily basis, it could be weekly basis or a monthly basis, and it is being reviewed effectively by different people in the hierarchies. So the outcome and the output metrics, if it is actually identified very clearly in terms of the dashboards, and if there is a rhythm of a dashboard management, either through any of those things, people to call as a monthly reviews of the functional heads, or it could be called as a rhythm established, whichever method, but dashboard is the essence of it. The dashboards will tell you which process are broken to what extent, and it is requiring interventions. The moment you get those alarm of a red matrix or a amber matrix around those dashboards, you should be in a position to go back to that particular process and say that okay, there is a need to do something in that process to make this entire matrix green. That is more objective driven progressive review mechanism than maybe a pseudo mechanism of going by periodicity.
Yeah. So what I actually call is, contextual measurement. It's in context to whatever. So the other piece also is that review of the metrics, not in terms of what the metrics are saying, but are the metrics right, and am I measuring all that is required to be measured?
Right.
Because there is this one difference, when in an operational scenario where your internal metrics, that is what we measure of our people, is a certain number, but what the customer, when you hear the voice of the customer, it is different. And the difference is sometimes like really really very wide, because normally our internal processes, we think that they are about 99%, that's their performance level, 99.9 also sometimes, and what the customer says is around 60. It's different. So the difference between internal measure and external measure is so much that unless one puts it in context, and unless one calibrates it often, it may not really get the desired output.
So the good, I got it. I got it. So the good news
Yeah.
here is the technology now available is far superior than the possible technology which was available in the past. So we have been always talking about, anything and everything which is actually measured can be improved upon, but measurement is also costly. You cannot measure each and everything and an aspect around it, and whatever was getting measured in the past was limited to samples, whereas now with the advent of technology you can actually have a reach of the entire population level measurements possible, and those population level measurements are readily coming out, and they are available close to real time. So those lag element is actually becoming more lead, and it is creating a time to action on an immediate basis. So say for example, there, why we are talking about internal metrics and external metrics, because internal metrics are more measured by a set of people internally, and they are easy to do that, versus maybe a survey is administered to the customer or a bunch of a customer at a later date by some other functions, and those data are coming to me at a later date and I am seeing in conjunction, and that's where the surprise comes in, or these two functions are coming in together. So a business owner, I look into my moment of truth through my metrics, and the marketing function is giving me a mirror of my function. So those are the silos are actually now getting broken, because you can actually, at the end of the delivery of a transaction, you can administer a survey and survey results come to you and you yourself can see. So in your own dashboard, you can show what customer survey results are showing and what is your metrics is actually showing. And if there is a congruency, great. If there is a gap, then you need to correct it rather than you getting exposed in front of your superior.
Yeah. So that is one part, and the other one is also that if you start with what the customer is saying, so the metrics which the customer is, the score or the measure that the customer is saying, and then work it downwards, rather than the other way around. So there's a general tendency of working it the other way around. Look, my metrics is so and so, and then I try to match what the customer is saying, as against the customer is saying 60, and then why is that 60 happening, and then I work backwards to find out what
You
it
are
is.
right.
Yeah,
You are right. So
fixed
there is a
fixed or
mindset of a
sorry.
functional mindset through which people have been working towards improvement and saying that, oh, I am doing an improvement, versus there is a reimagining of the process what is required, and that reimagining requires first and foremost CTQ, critical to customer, as the first requirement, and you bring in those metrics or the voice of the customer first, the noise of the customer as a second, and then what are the choices which you are actually providing as a part of your internal metrics. If you can combine this voice, noise and choice as a set of metrics as a part of your dashboard, your entire dashboard, if it is really appearing in silos today or is an aggregation, will be completely a different entity, and accordingly the processes need to be redesigned and it need to be reworked in your own mind, before your superior or any other function will actually talk about it. So you will be having a better control on the entire value stream. So that's where the technology and methodology comes together to make that kind of an impact happen.
Yeah, so there is a possibility, as you're saying, that you might in an automated kind of a scenario, you get a certain piece of data, but if something has been missing out from there, you need to figure it out through this methodology that you're talking
Even
about,
it
because
may not be a survey. It may not be a
yeah.
survey. If a transaction is now automated, say for example an RPA has been introduced, now you know that what are the stages at which an RPA rule engines have been operated, and whether all those rules have been followed as a part of a checklist of your compliance, that can be now
Yeah.
given, which is actually a black box when a human being is doing it.
Yeah, that you're
So,
right.
so then your dashboards become much more rich, and it has
Yeah.
becoming on auditability and all those kind of thing criteria.
But so what you're basically saying from your point is that whatever we do, okay, to bring about good results, needs to be reviewed on a constant basis. So it's not like, if I fix it today, it's done and, I can leave it there. It needs to be reviewed, and it needs to be reviewed in context, because many things which you are measuring and tracking before something got introduced may not be required now. And, some new things may be required. But yeah, keeping the customer at the center, the CTQ, as you're saying, I think that's a critical part of measurement also in general.
So I give a metaphor here, saying that what is the color of your watermelon. So your watermelon, when you really look into from an outside, is green, right? But when you cut it, it is red. In a little context of our dashboard, whatever we present it, our version of truth, as a green matrix, but when somebody cuts it, gets into it, he finds that there are only bleedings which are taking place. So that's what is something which we need to be really understanding it. If you yourself can cut it and can see those kind of a red, then obviously you will improve upon it, and you know that your processes are not designed properly, and those processes need to be augmented with the right technologies. It cannot be just a set of NVAs which you are currently doing.
So I think we've covered a large various industries, various companies, and I think we've really gone into a lot of aspects of business excellence, alignment. But there's one question which is continuously coming to my mind, because you're a business excellence, that's like your core. What is the relevance of having these certificates, like ISO certificates, or whatever else that exists?
So that's a great question. Actually, again, when we talk about a transformation in any organization, uh, there are uh, there are three components which are required. One is the process or the methodology. The second is basically the technology which we spoke about, and third is obviously the connectors, which is people who is making this methodology and technology connected for creating delivery of that thing. Now we are actually talking about the people dimensions. So for a person who is mobilizing a process, need to really first and foremost understand a process, understand a set of methodologies, and would be in a position to really decipher it, which methodology or the process type is better for him or her to create the delivery of that value. So as the case for the technology. So among the various technologies, which is the most appropriate technology? Whether that is applicable to me or not, and so on and so forth. So for appreciating that methodology and technology, obviously somebody has to have that kind of an awareness. So there is a preliminary level of knowledge sharing or a certification which is required for a person to go for that kind of a workshop or a training or a certification, saying that yeah, I understand some of these things. So like the latest buzz is on the data analytics, but how is that applicable to me? How can my dashboards be really looked into very differently? So with that inquiry, a person may go for a program on data analytics, and a later date find out, oh wow, I can really make a huge difference if I know some of those languages and some of those packages. And if that interest develops, then obviously one can enroll for those advanced level of training, certifications, qualifications, and becoming an expert. So so from an awareness to becoming an expert, there are different level of training, interventions, and certifications which are there, both for methodology and for technology. And it all is important for a human being to really look into, for making his or her own contribution to leverage these two to the best. And in process of doing that, obviously person is creating a growth trajectory for oneself.
Yeah. So from a learning perspective, I completely agree. In fact, I also think sometimes that it's a very good idea to have a kind of a checklist to see whether especially from a company perspective, that whether you're following all that is required to be followed. And sometimes there are things as simple as do you have SOPs? Do you have documented processes? A very basic stuff. So to that extent, it is fine. But when you're just so obsessed with getting the certificate that you lose the spirit of it, that's where I think it just becomes a mechanical exercise. So that was my question, because this gets discussed often, because there's a lot of resources that are invested to actually get certified, and whether it really carries that kind of value and effect.
So
So
as I
that
said,
was.
any amount of knowledge which a person will be imparted with or will be acquiring will be of effective use for that individual growth, as well as the role that person is doing it. Now, obviously, that increases one's CV value, which also brings in a different opportunities for him, and also maybe at a later date create a specialization kind of an interest, saying that okay, while I was earlier doing maybe a common set of things which is more generic in nature, now I want to get specialized into that. So many of the people, like in the quality field, they were working on maybe a lean or a Six Sigma kind of a certification. Now with the advent of data science, they are now getting into analytics kind of a certifications as a part of the upgrade, for creating them to be upskilling, and then trying to attract different opportunities for their existence, their survival, and then their significance kind of a thing. But yes, any investment of time, effort on the certification need to be really thought through in terms of career progression and other thing, rather than just a part of acquiring it. So that is something which is given, because it's a time, cost, effort, both on the part of the organization. Sometime organization provide these kind of a training, sometime an individual wants to really go for it, because he believes that that is something which is going to be helpful.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I think we've had intense discussions on varied range of topics. So is there any one message that you'd like to give the listeners before we conclude?
So when we talk about any change, So there are three components to the change which we spoke about. There is a desirability, there has to be a feasibility, and then there has to be a viability. That which I called as a D into V into F. The three components need to be really there in place. If they are not there, any other thing which is done will only create more of a challenge for you, and is not going to be creating the desired result, which will be a pull for the customers, or maybe a new change which will be coming into the organizations. So the moment you bring in D into V into F as a combination, it will always be greater than, which I called as I. So whatever is the investment we will put in, it will be certainly more than the investment. So ROI piece will be taken care of. It will be something which will be making a change which will be irreversible when we put these three things together. And this is something which will be something which will be inspiring others, not only within the organization but for outside. So people aspire for making a benchmark, but that is only possible if you make D into V into F greater than that I.
Great. So thank you so much, Jitendra, for your time and for sharing your experience. Let's hope we meet for a session two of continuing this discussion. Thank you so much.
Looking forward. Thanks, Satinder. Appreciate for creating this opportunity for learning and sharing.
My pleasure.